Hello and welcome to the Ignition Zone, your go-to podcast where we ignite ideas, spark transformation, and fuel the journey to unlocking Africa's economic potential. I am your host, Matebe Zobo, and I'm so excited to take you on this incredible adventure into the world of economic development, entrepreneurship, and career growth. Hello and welcome to the Ignition Zone podcast. My guest is Wofai Samuel, the Acting Director General of the Nigerian-American Chamber of Commerce, a dynamic voice in trade facilitation, economic development, and business leadership. She has worked extensively to bridge the gap between Nigeria's private sector and international markets, and she's also a Forbes Africa featured leader. And I have the privilege of being featured alongside her as Africa's top 100 career woman by 9 to 5 Chick with sponsors like The Guardian and United Capital. Wofai, to say that I'm grateful to have you on the podcast is an understatement. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Mateba. I'm honored. I'm really pleased. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Perfect. And let's start off this conversation with something we can both resonate with, right? Which is women in leadership. Obviously aware that women in leadership positions, be it in the public sector and private sector, have such low representation, both globally and on the African continent. How have you managed to break some of these limiting barriers and the social norms in your journey to becoming Director General of the Nigerian-American Chamber of Commerce?
Thank you very much for that question. That's a very important question because if you look around the world, there's not too many women in, very senior or in the most senior positions of leadership. It's not something you see that's very common. But in recent times, it's a good thing that in so many countries, in so many parliaments, in government, in the public sector, in the private sector, in businesses, we're beginning to see more women-led businesses, more women speaking up, more women in private sectors, more women in government. But to answer your question directly, so I work in a male-dominated environment, a predominantly male-dominated terrain. So I would say that 98% of the people I work with are males, from my bosses to my colleagues at the office to my clientele, the people I do business with, they're predominantly men. And let's say, 2% of them are women. How have I been able to navigate this terrain? I don't look at myself as, a female or a male. I look at myself as an individual who is qualified to do the job. And so at any point in time, my focus is on the job. And the body language that you exude, the personality that you exude, backed up with skills, the skills that you have, the competence that you have, makes people respect you, makes people give you a place on the table. I don't necessarily believe in equity. I must be very honest. I've always said, he who deserves to get the position or he who deserves to get the post, he who deserves to get the job should be given the job, not necessarily because the person is a woman or a man. So, for me as a person, every other time I clamor and I advocate, I advise women to build skills, I advise them to build capacity, I advise them to get an education. All of these are some of the features that you have, some of the characteristics that you have, which would set you apart. You don't necessarily need to walk into a room and saying, oh, I need a position here because I'm a woman, because women are underrepresented. You're a woman and women are underrepresented. But if you're not qualified and capable to do the job, then at the end of the day, the entire job might be ridiculed. So how I've been able to bridge this gap is, as much as I can, trying to advocate to women, build skill, build capacity, build your knowledge, build, the value that you bring to the table. And at the end of the day, a table would always be set for you. It depends on you, how you prove yourself and how you make them believe or understand that you're able to match up the positions.
Yeah, that is absolutely amazing. So it sounds like women honestly have to always show up twice as much in terms of showcasing our skill sets. I mean, I love that you are also advocating in the work that you do, but also recognizing that you actually have to be almost overqualified, I would assume, and always showcase what you have to offer. But let's get into Nigeria. Nigeria is often referred to as the giant of Africa, yet it faces significant economic challenges, ranging from currency volatility to inflation and unemployment. GDP growth over the past few years has been inconsistent, poverty rates remain high, and youth unemployment continues to rise. What role does the chamber play in addressing these challenges through partnerships and trade?
Okay, thank you very much. So, like the name implies, the Nigerian-American Chamber of Commerce is the oldest and foremost bilateral chamber of commerce established in Nigeria in 1960 to promote trade, investments, and businesses between Nigeria and the United States. So, two things on our minds. How can we, expand American businesses into Nigerian markets? That's focus number one. Then focus number two, how do we draw Nigeria closer to America in terms of economic and social success? Speaking to clientele, speaking to new market entry, to name a few. It goes both ways. Some of the main challenges that businesses across the country face is a lack of proper infrastructure. When you talk about proper infrastructure, you're talking about roads, you're talking about rails, you're talking about technology, you're talking about ports. Fortunately, it's getting better. You have loans, grants, monies from a lot of multilateral finances and financial institutions, both home and abroad. And so it's getting better. More roads built, more contracts awarded, more partnerships garnered. So for the chamber, we organize a lot of capacity building workshops where we get to speak to a lot of young businesses, SMEs, that's small medium enterprises, and of course large corporates. We bring them together, we speak to them, we tell them about the incentives that are available that they can use in maximizing profits for their business. We tell them about loans and grants that are available from multilateral institutions, even here in Nigeria, from the banks and so on and so forth. We also bring people from all of these institutions to talk to them, in a close-knitted environment where you're talking to all of these professionals, knowledge building and, wisdom. Getting information about any field, any sector you're a part of is very key. And so we try as much as we can to ensure that we equip our businesses, our members with the right knowledge that they need to facilitate through all of these challenges that they face. Now, away from infrastructure development, another issue that businesses face in Nigeria is access to finance. So access to finance, sometimes the collateral you need to obtain a loan from a bank could be really high, limiting the
Yeah.
ability of small businesses to even begin or even get a business registered. Talk more of scaling, talk more of sustaining. So we bring them one on one with a lot of the senior banking officials of some of these organizations, especially the banks, to tell them what they can possibly do, what strategy they can engage in to obtain some of the loans that are necessary for them to either scale or even begin and sustain their businesses. Access to finance continues to remain a big deal. Now, away from access to finance, another challenge that businesses face, not necessarily SMEs this time, I'm talking about large corporates, is the instability of FX, instability of the foreign currency, instability of the volatility of the FX market. So a lot of times the exchange rates are almost inconsistent. So with the level of inconsistency in the exchange rates, investors shy away from investing in a particular market, and Nigeria faces that. But fortunately, we're thankful to the current administration, that is trying so hard to unify the FX, the exchange rate. That way, it gives investors a lot of confidence. What do we do as a chamber? We continue to advocate for policies of this nature that supports businesses, including large corporates. We also engage in business matchmaking services. Business matchmaking services, what I mean by that is we bring in businesses that are qualified and businesses that are suitable for certain sectors in the US. And then we bring in people in the same sector from the US to meet with these businesses from Nigeria, interact with them, and see how they can possibly get to a compromise, a meeting point where they get to exchange ideas, generate new clients, introduce their products and services to this market. So in very, very simple terms, we try as much as we can to, drive advocacy for these businesses. We try as much as we can to create networking opportunities, bringing together high-end level officials to interact with our businesses. And then we also create matchmaking sessions for them. The final thing I'd also like to add is we organize a lot of trade missions to the US and from the US. So inbound from the US, we bring people from the US to Nigeria, and then we take people from Nigeria to the US. You can't imagine how impactful this has been on the businesses of Nigerians. So initially, it might look small because at the end of the day, these are like very little steps. But when you sum it all up together, you would understand and realize that whether directly or indirectly, the Nigerian-American Chamber of Commerce is contributing to the success of US Nigeria trade. And in 2024, the trade volumes between Nigeria and the US was very successful. Nigeria had one of the lowest trade deficits with America in 2024. So it would be very wrong for anyone to say, oh, the Nigerian-American Chamber of Commerce never played a role in facilitating some of these trade deals or some of these businesses. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did. But I guess it would be amiss not to talk about the elephant in the room, right? So 20 January, the world changed in America and we saw a new administration come in. And that administration is the Trump's administration, and it has made it quite clear in terms of what its focus areas are. They are about America first. They are about, um, you know, really thinking about how best America can win in all trade deals. And so my question for you is, has there had to be a shift in the way the Nigeria-American Chamber of Commerce approaches these discussions and these engagements with the new administration?
Okay, so thank you very much. The truth is, the Nigerian-American Chamber of Commerce, myself sitting here, we might never really necessarily have the opportunity to meet with President Trump face to face to discuss with him. But the point and the fact is, there are lots of trade representations in the US. And when people talk about the US government is not just about Donald Trump. Donald Trump puts together the policies and then it trickles down to all the states. Various states also have their policies, but the general policies put together by President Trump affects trade in the world, affects trade in America. But there are different states. There's the state of Florida, there's the state of California, there's the state of Maryland, Louisiana. These are states that have imported so much to Nigeria. But let me respond to your question directly. The policies that have been put together by the US president presently is affecting the entire world. America pulled out of World Health Organization, and even the Director General of World Health Organization put out a statement to tell the world how deeply WHO would be affected. You're aware America has pulled out of the human rights in United Nations, just to name a few. Donald Trump is very transactional. President Trump from day one was never a career politician. He's always been a businessman. He's a transactional personality. So everything about him is, what do I get? What do I take? And his America policy first is just the best thing to do and the right way, the right way to go. But at the end of the day, I've said it over and again, Africa is not a market that should be ignored. And the reason why I said Africa is not a market that should be ignored is because the likes of China, the likes of Russia are seeking inroads to Africa. They are seeking ways to become stronger, closer, and generate even deeper ties with Africa. You cannot afford to ignore a continent like Africa that has the world's vast majority of natural minerals, the world's vast majority of, natural resources. That's number one. Number two, when Donald Trump was president in his previous administration, he met with two African presidents, and that was the former president of my country, President Muhammadu Buhari, and the president of Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta, to discuss, socio-economic relationships. But the President Trump was seeing in 2025 is totally different from what we knew and experienced during his first administration. So automatically, the way and manner we relate with him has to be totally different. It's not business as usual. Look at what is happening with Canada and Mexico. He's even saying, if you put out a retaliatory tariff, I would put out a retaliatory tariff. I'm not just increasing your tariff. If I increase your tariff and you increase yours, we would put out a retaliatory tariff 50-50. Now, what am I saying in essence? Africa has to see ways that it can create value for itself and create value for the world. And that is what the Nigerian-American Chamber of Commerce is clamoring for. Produce more goods and services that are measurable with foreign international standards that are acceptable. Produce more goods and services that the US can possibly look at and they're satisfied to say, okay, we want to work with these people. We want to work with you. We want to trade with you. We want to buy from you. In the time of Donald Trump, or I'd say during this administration of President Trump, we're not looking at aid. We're looking more at trade. But if Nigeria as a country, for instance, is not ready to trade, how would the president of the United States do business with us? How would America do business with us? America is already doing business with us. Like I mentioned, the trade deficit is less than $2 billion. The trade deficit in 2024 was 1.5 billion. That was very, very low. So America imported quite a lot of products from Nigeria. So it's simple. For the chamber, we are saying manufacturers, try as much as you can to manufacture more in line with what America wants. Let me break this down. If you look at some states in America, like Louisiana, you look at Maryland, you look at Florida, you look at I'll say a little bit of Virginia, but the main states are Louisiana, you look at Maryland, you look at Florida, you look at Texas. These are countries that imported a lot from Nigeria. Some of the things that America needs: sesame seeds, rubber, sesame seeds, cocoa, raw sugar, shell butter, to name a few. These are some of the very natural products that America buys: rice, flour,
Yeah.
wheat from so many countries in the world. So how can we possibly produce some of these things to the best standards that can be, generally accepted by the US? That's question number one. Then question number two, with respect to services, Nigerians are doing great in the US. In the aspects of technology in the Silicon Valley, we have a whole lot of tech people from Nigeria. How can we possibly, collaborate with companies, organizations in the US to improve on our tech sector? So if we're able to put together all of this and produce, export services that are at par with what America wants, it just automatically means there will be more trade. But if we sit back and then we're waiting for aid, we never know what the outcome of USAID would be. Right now, we don't know where it's going with USAID. President Trump was talking about all the countries that the previous administration had loaned monies to, had donated monies to in form of grants, had donated monies to in form of projects, and they were quite displeased with it. So if we're sitting down and waiting for business as usual, grants to Africa, aids to Africa, it just might not work. It just wouldn't work under President Trump with the signals that we're getting at the moment. So it's just value, 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 value. AFCFTA is coming up. That's the African Continental Free Trade
Yeah.
Agreement. But this is the catch. If Nigeria and Africa is able to trade more within itself, intra-African trade, that is what African Export-Import Bank clamors for. If we're able to trade more within ourselves, it automatically increases investors' confidence. It automatically gives the US confidence to want to trade with us. If we trade more intra-Africa, the money stays within Africa. And if the money stays within Africa, tell me why foreign direct investment will not come to Africa. So AFCFTA is something that the continent has to take very seriously in
Yeah.
order for the world to take
Yeah.
it even more seriously than they're taking us now. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting that you should mention the African Continental Free Trade Area because it does represent a transformational opportunity for us as Africa by the mere fact that in 2030, we are projected to be about 1.5 billion people on this continent. And so when you look at Nigeria being a very big market in itself, having a lot of people from a population perspective, but also having fundamentally interesting businesses in the technology sector and so on, has Nigeria actually taken advantage or optimized or even led this AFCFTA to make sure that, it gets the traction that it needs in order to move forward? And what are some of those practical steps that Nigerian businesses can take, especially as a business belonging to the chamber? Because you're absolutely right. I think America is going to have a very value-based conversation or transactional conversation. But I think the game changer for Africa is really in the opportunity that lies ahead in the African Continental Free Trade Area.
So I have particularly been very impressed with how Nigeria is going about AFCFTA. There's actually an AFCFTA coordinating office in Nigeria. They've been on top of this. Various commissioners for trade in various states across the country. They've been trying as much as they can to see how they can improve on their manufacturing. So if your manufacturing sector is not strong, then you cannot maximize African Continental Free Trade Area. So African Continental Free Trade Area, it sounds really bogus and gigantic, but in very simple terms, it's just a trade area where we're able to exchange goods and services without so many barriers. If you're trading from here, you're trading in Nigeria with Rwanda. Believe me, even if you're going by air, the hiccups, the length of time it takes, it's quite enormous.
Right.
It's quite enormous. I'm not even talking about the visa processes for Nigerians who are traveling to South Africa or traveling to, other sub-Saharan African countries like Kenya, to name a few. So AFCFTA is there to limit these trade barriers. I can assure you that Africa trades more with foreigners. Africa trades more with Europe. We trade more with China and Asia than we trade within ourselves. And then the excuse is we don't produce goods and services that are up to the standards of what we need. But I always tell people sometimes the information is not even there. If a country like, let's say, Sao Tome and Principe is producing a particular good or product, and at the end of the day, the government of Nigeria, the Trade Ministry of Nigeria, the Exports Agency of Nigeria is totally unfamiliar with the island of Sao Tome and Principe. How are they going to trade? How are they going to do business? How do they exchange? So the information to begin with is not even there most times. So practical steps. Number one, capacity, capacity, capacity. If you do not have capacity, how do you maximize opportunities that are available? It's
Right.
like asking somebody If you do not have capacity, it's like asking somebody who is not able to express himself in English language to speak French. You can't even speak English. You can't express yourself in English. You've never heard English. So how would you be able to express yourself in French when you don't even live in France? You've never taken a French course. So it's simple. We have to build capacity. We have to build capacity. Capacity meaning for the manufacturers, they have to look strategically, practical steps, strategically at what Ghana needs. What does Ghana need that Ghana imports from America? What does Ghana need that Ghana imports from Europe? What does Ghana need? Ghana is importing from Asia. How can we possibly produce some of these things that Ghana needs? Same thing. The person in Ivory Coast is checking. What does Nigeria need? Okay, Nigeria is importing automobiles, cars from America. I mean, we've not gotten to the stage where we're producing cars, but that's just an example. Okay, Nigeria is importing cars from the US. Can we produce some cars in South Africa and make it more available for Nigeria, at cheaper rates? Okay, Nigeria is importing. What else do we import? We're importing gasoline. We're importing gasoline. Let's say we're importing gasoline from Canada or we're importing gasoline from Europe. Can we produce gasoline in a way that measures up the standards of what Nigeria wants and then export it to them? And is Nigeria willing and open to accept gasoline that is coming from South Africa or gasoline that's coming from Kenya? These are just examples of what I'm talking about. So at the end of the day, number one, the information has to be there. If the information is not there, people cannot maximize the benefits and the opportunities because the knowledge is not there. Talking about the technical know-how. So over and again, I've seen the Nigerian government talking very strongly about AFCFTA, the need for the manufacturing association, the need for manufacturers to meet the organized private sector. These are the organized private sector to a reasonable extent controls more than 55% of businesses in every country. So they meet and discuss on potential areas where they can improve on the services and products that they have for it to be exportable to other countries. That's a practical step number one. Practical step number two, we must try as much as we can to engage and engage and engage. And what do I mean by engage? The currencies in Africa are not unified. So from Nigeria to Togo, it's a totally different currency. To Benin, there's SEPA, there's the Ghana cedis, there's the Naira, there's the South African francs, there's different kinds of currencies. Now, because the currencies are not unified, comparable to Europe that has the pounds and the pounds and euros, and America that uses the dollars. I mean, dollar is the most unified currency in the world. It makes it very difficult for Africa to trade because we don't have a unified currency. But at the end of the day, there are various cross-border channels and platforms that traders can maximize to make trade seamless and efficient. Right. And so I have seen ECOWAS and so many countries in around sub-Saharan Africa talking practically on how they can make cross-border payments seamless and easy. If cross-border payments are seamless and easy, monies are not lost in between the channels of trade. It makes trade a lot more practical, a lot more feasible. And then number three is governments have to be transparent. So when you talk about AFCFTA, it's almost impossible if the big players or the big parties involved are corrupt. So that transparency has to be there in the entire process, every step of the way, with respect to the transactions, the trade that is being instituted between the countries that are involved in the project. These are just three of, so many practical steps I could outline.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love your practical steps around making sure that we're clear on engagement, especially in terms of the gaps that exist in various countries. And so my question to you is, what is the role of the chambers in leading that sort of discussion? Because absolutely the work you're doing on a day-to-day basis is focused more on the American and Nigerian trade relationship. But what do you think are the opportunities that exist for multiple chambers to come together and have a sort of CTA sort of chamber that enables those discussions and leads it and organizes private sector in that manner?
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to speak specifically to what the chamber does or can do with respect to AFCFTA. So now we collaborate with a lot of organizations and platforms that are involved in cross-border payments to make it seamless for our traders, our businesses to utilize these platforms for payment. So you're trading with Ghana, you're already on a platform that is linked to the chamber that facilitates cross-border payments. You don't have to go through the hurdles of trying to look for a credible party or a credible platform to work with. That is the chamber indirectly eliminating one barrier. And then
Right.
still talking about maximizing the benefits of AFCFTA. The chamber had recently gone into a partnership with the US Africa Trade Desk. So the US Africa Trade Desk comes up with various items, various products and services that are available for exports. And then what we do is we recommend businesses to them that they can work with. A lot of times, the US Africa Trade Desk is sending us inquiries from other African countries, US businesses in various African countries that are seeking to work with Nigerians. So what do? We pass on the order to the Nigerian businesses, and the ones who are able to measure up with the standards apply. And if you're good enough, you're taken to work with them. That is another way of maximizing trade within the continent, but not directly working with the US. So you're working with a US affiliate in Africa that is seeking to trade within you, that's seeking to trade, that's seeking to connect businesses from the US with Africa in Africa. So you're connecting US businesses in Cote d'Ivoire to Nigeria. You're looking for soybeans from Nigeria, but the companies that are looking for soybeans from Nigeria are the companies in Cote d'Ivoire that are American companies, working with the US Africa Trade Desk and similar like minded organizations. Then, number three, language barrier is always a problem. So, a lot of times, people prefer to trade with people they can understand, people they can relate with. So, the French speaking countries would rather want to trade French to French. So, you see French speaking countries trading more with France, trading more with some countries in Europe that are French inclined. How do we bridge this language barrier? Whenever we organize our networking sessions, we have our events, we have our exhibitions, we invite people from various countries of the world. So it is not just limited to Nigeria. People come from, American Chamber of Commerce in Cote d'Ivoire, American Chamber of Commerce in Ghana, American Chamber of Commerce in Togo. There's American Chamber of Commerce in South Africa. We've had conversations with American Chamber of Commerce in South Africa. So we're inviting people from all over Africa. And while they're coming to Nigeria, they are not just meeting the chamber, they are meeting with Nigerian businesses. Again, like I mentioned, all of these steps would seem like, very meager and insignificant steps. But by the time you sum up all of these steps, you realize that your scoring over 10 is 0.1 or is 0.2. You're contributing to easing the barriers that exist between trade in Africa, irrespective of how little and how insignificant the contributions are. So again, like I mentioned, these are three practical steps of what the chamber is doing to ensure that businesses around the country, our members maximize, AFCFTA.
Yes. So that sounds quite powerful. So when you think about that impact, right, especially in the context of a Nigerian economy that has been wanting to diversify itself for many, many years away from oil resources, how then does this chamber, so what from an impact perspective, how has the chamber sort of led the diversification efforts? And are you starting to see offshoots? What are those um, key things that you can highlight that are definitely saying that you're moving in the right direction in terms of getting to a diversified economy?
Okay, with respect to a diversified economy, Nigeria is doing so well in that regard. So over time, we've been clamoring for, our ability to export non-oil products out of Nigeria. There's something called AGOA, right? The Africa Growth and
Yeah.
Opportunities Act has been in existence for a while. And some countries in Africa have maximized, the benefits of AGOA. But for Nigeria, what we've done the most under AGOA is exporting oil products, not non-oil products. South Africa has done more of non-oil products. Ghana has done a bit more of non-oil products. Kenya has done a bit more of non-oil products. But Nigeria has done so much of oil products. Now, if we need to attract more foreign direct investment, we have to diversify and export more of non-oil products. By this, I mean some of the things that we mine, our services. When I talk about our services also includes digital technology. Our financial sectors is one of the strongest in Africa, if not the strongest. If you're talking about the top three strongest financial sectors in Africa, Nigeria is part of them in terms of fintech, financial technology. Now, what is the chamber doing practically? What is the chamber practically doing in this regard? When you look at non-oil export products, a lot of events that we organize, a lot of networking sessions, a lot of talk shops that we organize are based off non-oil exports. I can't even recall the last time we did anything on petroleum, oil and energy. Virtually everything we do is, agriculture. Virtually everything we do is on manufacturing, it's on finance, banking and finance, it's on technology. I could go on and on. Well, you're in the room and you're in a room filled with tech enthusiasts. You're in a room filled with agriculturists. You're in a room filled with people who are into mining, manufacturing. Manufacturing is quite broad. It covers the entire spectrum of the economic value chain. So when we put together all these conversations and we bring in these officials who are in other sectors apart from oil, every other sector but not oil, they are talking about the opportunities they have within the sector. They're talking about the challenges that they face, and most times, if there are public office officials in the room, or if there are public service holders in the room, they are listening to them directly and taking back some of these points they've made to form policies.
Right.
Whether you like it or not, government has no business doing business, but government has to create the right policies to ensure that businesses thrive. And it's not something that happens overnight. It takes time. It takes time. It's one step at a time, but you have to continue pushing. You have to continue, congregating these people in a room. You have to continue advocating. So that's a practical step we take to encourage non-oil products, non-oil exports. The majority of, the assemblage that we have are focused on non-oil exports. Another thing we also do is with respect to advocacy. When we talk about advocacy, the most part of our researches from the secretariat that we do is focused on manufacturing. How far have we gone in manufacturing? How well are we doing in manufacturing? How well are we doing in mining? In the services sector, which has come up to be really, really strong and of so much of advantage to Nigeria. How well are we doing about this? So we put together all of this research, and when people reach out to us, we share information with them, and it encourages them to want to come and invest in Nigeria. It encourages them to want to do business with Nigeria and Nigerian companies. We're not talking about, oh, the oil sector, the energy. No, no, no. We're not focused on the oil sector at all. We're not focused on crude oil exports. We're focused on so many other sectors away from oil. So these are like very practical, realistic things that the chamber does. And then the other thing I want to say is recently we had a trade mission. We brought in some people from the US to Nigeria. We brought in about 10 companies from the state of Illinois, the government of Illinois. Many thanks to the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, government of Illinois. They brought in 10 companies to Nigeria, and over 100 businesses met with these companies. At the end of the day, you need to see a continuous circle where more American companies are coming in here to explore what we have away from oil and gas. And we have to continue to take people from Nigeria to America to explore so many sectors apart from oil and gas. There's the logistics, there's the transport, there's mining, there's the aviation. The transport company is huge. The logistics company is huge. America's logistics company is one of the biggest in the world, if not the biggest.
Yeah.
So how can we bring people in the logistics sector from the US to come here, explore opportunities with our own logistics company, our own transport companies? What can we possibly do together? So the chamber is not, we've never necessarily been focused on oil. Oil is great. Nigeria needs oil to get out of oil, to get out of poverty. Oil has funded this country for so many years.
Yes.
Oil is fantastic, but at the end of the day, if we have to make more money, we have to generate more foreign direct investment. We have to create more jobs. We have to reduce unemployment. We have to reduce inflation. Then we have to focus on agriculture, on mining, on the services sector, on technology, on finance, and so many other sectors.
I do like what you're saying, though, about private sector and, in fact, entrepreneurs, because then it's about how robust are we in terms of identifying those opportunities. Can we compete against the very best in the world? And my question to you would be like, what are those areas that you think Nigeria, in this instance, and maybe I'll even broaden it to other African countries, but what are those areas that you feel like Nigeria can outcompete, the best, the very best, even in markets like the US and China and in these global superpowers that are rising up?
Thank you so much for that question. That's a very brilliant question. So, Nigeria, we are the largest economy in Africa. We have a huge workforce. Our population is our strength. A population of more than 200 million people. If it's properly harnessed, Nigeria could be the next gold mine in the world. We are already a gold mine in Africa. But to respond to your question directly, let us look at the creative industry sector. I would say that on the continent of Africa, Nigerians have the most Grammy nominations. Nigeria have the most Grammy awards. So Nollywood, the music industry, is one or two aspects of the creative industry that have brought significant FDI into Nigeria. There has been momentous foreign direct investment into Africa through Nigeria's creative industry. Look at Netflix. Look at what Netflix is doing with the
Mm,
movies that we're producing. Look at what Sony and so many other organizations in America are doing with our entertainment industry. Our films are streaming on airplanes in the US. You know, planes, I'm sorry, that's over exaggerating. Our films are streaming on airplanes that are traveling from Nigeria to the US, African, various African airlines. You're watching Nollywood movies on various African airlines that are traveling to the US and so many other places in the world. That is investment. That is putting Nigeria on the global map. So for our creative industry, I would say we have to continue keeping the momentum, keeping the drive. We have to push more with our film, with our music, with our television shows. And then you look at our arts, our culture, our food, our fashion, our style. The
mm,
Nigerian art
yeah.
is gaining global recognition. You're looking at runways in Europe and you're seeing our styles, our fabrics getting exhibited. You're seeing models adorning the fabrics that we wear. People are placing orders from Switzerland, from so many other countries in the world for African fabrics, not just Nigeria. And then across the continent of Africa, people are placing orders for our arts. People want to explore our food. It's called tourism, memorabilia. People come here to visit and they want to go back with tangible things they can look back and say, okay, they were in Nigeria. So the creative industry is one power that we have and we have to sustain it. We have to put in more momentum and more pressure to ensure that we continue to export that to the world. Apart from the creative industry, we also look at sectors like financial technology, the fintech.
Yes.
There's been so much of collaborations between Nigerian organizations and the US. Again, I haven't done a detailed research on this lately, and so I wouldn't want to put out any information that is not factual. But if you research deeply, you would see that, excuse me, there has been so many collaborations between Nigerian organizations and American organizations. Microsoft has sponsored so many Nigerian startups. I could go on and on Google to name a few of them. They all have their bases in Nigeria. At a point in time where Twitter, X, way back it was called Twitter, when it was shut down in Nigeria, you knew what happened. You
Hmm.
knew what happened. The
Hmm.
organization was in turmoil. They kept clamoring for X, currently X Twitter, to be brought back in Nigeria. Facebook generates a lot of money from Nigeria.
Yeah.
Amazon sells, a lot of Nigerians shop and buy from Amazon. So, you know, the financial service sector is something that we also need to hold very dear and very close to our minds and then see how we can expand. Look at the banking sector. Our banks have lots of branches internationally and across the region, meaning this sub-Saharan Africa, West Africa, East Africa. There's so many Nigerian banks that are establishing in various places across the continent. You don't see this with other banks in other African countries as much. And now you look at agriculture, which is like the jewel of Nigeria, agriculture, arable lands, tons of arable lands across Nigeria. That's something we need to put in use. But to put this in use, security has to be curbed because nobody wants to go into the farms if they feel they're not safe.
Yeah.
The spate of terrorism has to be curbed to the barest minimum.
Yes.
Bandits or non-gunmen, any herdsmen, Boko Haram, all of this have to be curbed. The government of the day is doing a good job, but they have to do more to ensure that farmers are safe. I don't plan to go into agriculture, but there's people that are passionate about agriculture. We should be able to tell them that they are safe to go in and farm and come out with this produce, put it on the table, we process it and export catfish, dried catfish, snails, mushrooms. We export all of this to other countries in the world.
For us as Africa, for me at least, the takeaway has been exactly what you said, which is, listen, these are the jewels that we have. Let's make sure that we are very clear in terms of scratching the surface and making sure we do our due diligence and we provide the best products that we possibly can. I'm sure definitely there's a big piece around investment, which we spoke about. But I think there's a piece around what the government itself needs to do. But I think it is encouraging for entrepreneurs in Nigeria, and I know them as entrepreneurial. I know Nigerians as being very entrepreneurial. So it is encouraging for them to sort of look at the work that you're doing as a chamber and say, how do we align ourselves with this space that enables us to grow and to transport our jewels and to shine? So I'm, for one, now particularly very excited about the work you do, and I feel like I want to join the chamber tomorrow. But but that's probably not the only thing you wanted to talk about. Yeah, in closing, I mean, Nigeria has got what do we think of Nigeria's next 10 years? What do you see in Nigeria looking like, especially based on the work that you do as well? Like you said, you mentioned quite honestly that a lot of these steps seem small, but actually, when you look at them in totality, they actually become these big transformation projects that you've done over the years. So when you look ahead 10 years from now on, what kind of Nigeria do you see? What kind of Nigeria do you see for entrepreneurs? What kind of Nigeria do you see that is trading in the global stage?
I see a Nigeria where there'll be an equal balance of trade, much more than what we're seeing now between ourselves and the US. So I'm very particular about the US because I advocate for, Nigeria and the United States. So for every example that I give, I like to use the US as an example. In the next 10 years, to be very realistic, I see a lot of investors coming to Nigeria, companies and businesses that have left. I see them coming back. I see policies, unification of Nigeria's currency, I see all of this attracting more FDIs. All I would want to say is in the next 10 years, I do hope that Nigeria would have moved from a position where we're still complaining and talking about electricity. We're still talking about roads to a point where we will be talking about which investor is coming into Nigeria, how much are they investing? Is it at par with what we want? What are they getting in return? Is this favorable for us? I want to see investors struggle to come to Nigeria to invest. Three other things I want to see. Insecurity. I want to see insecurity curb to the barest minimum. Nobody wants to invest in a society that is not safe.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why America attracts so much of investment, America has the highest military bases in the world. America has the strongest army in the world. America is the king of NATO. That's the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. America leads NATO. No country wants to get in a war with the United States is the safest country on the face of earth. Because your country is safe, it is natural for people to want to invest in your country. So in the
Yeah.
next 10 years, I expect to see strong leadership. Leadership in Nigeria that sends a signal to the world that Nigeria is ready for investment. Come in here and invest and your investment is safe. I want to see a more structured Nigeria from point to point, intertwined. What are the processes involved? How do we follow through on agreements to the
Yeah.
end? See
Yeah.
that these agreements are profitable, not just on paper, to the average Nigerian. And so the leaders in this part of the world should have it in their minds whenever they get into these deals. How does it trickle down to the average Nigerian?
Mm.
Not just glossing over the pockets of the people who are, on the upper echelon. So security, enhanced security in Nigeria, I want to see that. Improve foreign direct investment when all these factors are put in place in the next 10 years. 10 years is a very long time. Anything could happen. Anything positive could happen in 10 years. So I want to see improved foreign direct investment. I want to see improved security in Nigeria. I want to see our infrastructure fixed for the better. We shouldn't be talking about lights, electricity, water, environmental cleanliness, and all of this. Nigeria, the giant of Africa, with the potentials that we have, should go past the stages. And the onus is on the leaders, not just the president. There are states. What are the state governors doing? Legislative bodies. There are senators controlling constituencies. What are they doing? There are members in the houses of representatives representing you, representing your constituency. What are they doing? We talk about America and we sample their democracy. Let's also sample how the citizens hold their leaders accountable, not just making noise.
Yes.
So in the next 10 years, I expect to see a Nigeria that goes beyond clamoring for change on social media to a Nigeria where citizens engage in very intellectual conversations and clamor for real-time change, not just trending, to name a few.
Yeah. That is powerful. That is absolutely powerful. And I think you're right. And I'm going to just extend the question a little bit to say, what can the average Nigerian do? So, there's a lot that the leadership needs to do. Entrepreneurs are definitely thinking, but what does the average Nigerian do after listening to your message? What do they do? How can they rally around um, organizations or efforts that are already in place? What do I do if I'm in Nigeria and I get up and I say, this is the kind of Nigeria I want to see in 10 years.
Nigerians are known to be very hardworking people everywhere in the world. We thrive wherever we go. Look at the number of Nigerians that are doing great things all over the world. Look at the Nigerians in the British Parliament. We thrive. So I want to see more of the Nigerian can-do spirit. Do not allow the situation of the country break you. These days, what I get to see with Nigerians is, oh, there's so much of fuel subsidy, there's so much of unemployment, there's so much of poverty. And so that can-do spirit is gone. That can-do motivation is gone. That is not the spirit of a true Nigerian. No matter what happens, no matter what we face, we're always resolute. We stand strong. We never give up. I want to see more of that can-do spirit in the attitude and in the lives of Nigerians. If it was there, I want it enhanced. I want it enlightened. I want it amplified. Engage in more issues and factual-based conversations. Do your research. Engage in national conversations on your platform, irrespective of how little it is. You never know who is watching. Don't just stay back, and then when it's time for you to rant and shout on social media, you start ranting and shouting. Then number 3, you have to improve on yourself, because at the end of the day, if you do not improve on yourself and you're sitting back and waiting for people to give you opportunities, when the opportunities come, you're not even qualified. Government has its role to play. Private sector has its role to play. But you as a Nigerian, you have your role to play. Equip yourself with the right knowledge, the right skill, improve on yourself, and always keep that can-do spirit of Nigerians wherever you go. That is one thing that defines you. And then the final thing I want to say that I'd like to see from the standpoint of Nigerians is do the right thing. When we talk about the government, what are we doing as citizens? You're eating and you're throwing trash on the streets. You're not nice to your neighbor. You're not nice. Somebody comes to buy something from you and you're looking for ways to siphon monies out of them. You're cheating them. How nice is that? So those are my contributions.
I love that. Do the right thing. You know, we hardly speak about doing the right thing in our personal spaces. And that is important. And then we, to your point, it's so easy to point to government and to point to others, but actually it's about doing the right thing in our own personal spaces, because that's what integrity looks like. So us also being people of integrity. But Wofai, thank you so, so much. I mean, you are definitely a very inspirational person, and I am very passionate about the work you do. And I found our conversation insightful, thought-provoking, and very interesting in terms of just your views on what we should be doing as Africans when engaging with our fellow global traders or global counterparts, including the US. So I found that very thought-provoking. It's a very different thought or a different way of looking at it. And I'm actually walking away inspired. And I just want to thank you for your time and your passion and for the things that you do to make Nigeria a better place for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mateba. I'm so grateful. Thank you for the platform. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for spending this time with me. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time out here with you, and I'm glad that I've been able to contribute to some of this conversation, some of these subjects of national interest. And I look forward to even more sessions with you in the future. I'll be more than happy to engage further with you. Thank you
I
for all you do. Thank you for all you do. You are amazing.
You're definitely coming back. I'm not gonna say no. I'm never gonna say no.
Thank you.
To our listeners, if
Thank
you're
you
an
very much.
entrepreneur, policymaker, investor, or looking to understand the future of Nigeria's economy, this episode is a must listen. Subscribe, share, and join the conversation. Till next time, thank you.